It was July 13, 2004. The eyes of the nation fixated on a small town in Alabama, as a stunning 17-year-old girl named Natalie Holloway vanished without a trace during a high school graduation trip to Aruba. Her name dominated headlines. Her smile flashed across every TV screen. But just 13 days earlier, another young woman, Latoya Figueroa, a 24-year-old pregnant black woman from Philadelphia, had also gone missing. Her story barely made a whisper. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. And it had a name: Missing White Woman Syndrome. In the summer of 2005, America was consumed by a mystery. Natalie Holloway, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed honors student, had disappeared on the Caribbean island of Aruba. Within 48 hours, her story was picked up by CNN. Within 72, she was the top headline across every major news network. Nancy Grace dedicated nightly segments to her case. Donations and search volunteers flooded in. Meanwhile, on the streets of Philadelphia, 24-year-old Latoya Figueroa had not returned home from a prenatal appointment. She was 5 months pregnant. Her father reported her missing. He called the police. He called the local media. Silence. It wasn't until local blogger Richard Blair began to draw comparisons between the Holloway and Figueroa cases that the press took notice. He wrote, "Both are young women who vanished suddenly. But only one is plastered on every screen." Soon after his posts went viral, national outlets begrudgingly started covering Latoya's case. But by then, it was too late. Her body would be found weeks later, buried in a shallow grave. The phrase "missing white woman syndrome" was coined by the late journalist Gwen Ifill. During a panel discussion at a journalism conference, she quipped, "If there is a missing white woman, you are going to cover that every day." She wasn't joking. The disparity was backed by data. A 2016 study by the Scripps Howard News Service analyzed 5,000 missing persons cases. It found that white women were far more likely to be the subject of news stories than their black or Latina counterparts, despite women of color going missing at disproportionate rates. These weren't just statistics. They were lives, stories, and families begging to be heard. Fast forward to 2021. 22-year-old Gabby Petito disappeared during a cross-country road trip with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie. Her social media presence had made her a minor influencer. When she stopped posting, fans grew suspicious. Her case exploded. TikTokers became amateur sleuths. Twitter threads analyzed dash cam footage and Instagram captions. CNN hosted panels. Dr. Phil speculated. Within days, her van was found. Within weeks, her body was discovered in Wyoming. The FBI held press conferences. The world watched. In the midst of this, Indigenous activist Jordan D. Simon asked a haunting question. Where was this energy for the 710 Indigenous women who went missing in Wyoming over the past decade? Few had even heard those numbers before. In the Navajo Nation, a mother named Lela Begay still searches for her daughter, Aria, who went missing in 2019. She was 19 years old. The local police, underfunded and overworked, filed a basic report. The case stalled. No FBI. No national coverage. No billboards. "They say she ran away," Lela says, tears in her eyes. But why would she leave her little brother? Her puppy. Each year, hundreds of Indigenous women vanish from reservations. Many disappearances go uninvestigated for months. Some are never logged into the National Missing Persons database. "It's like we don't exist," Lela whispers. Dr. Janine Bell, a sociologist at Indiana University, explains, "Media attention is driven by perceived relatability. Viewers see themselves, or their daughters, in young white women. But empathy is shaped by exposure. If the media never shares stories of missing women of color, the public never learns to grieve them." Journalist Mara Schiavo Campo put it bluntly on a podcast, "We don't need less coverage of white women. We need equal coverage." Kimberly Dowdell walks into a church basement in Chicago with a stack of flyers. Her daughter, Mariah, has been missing for 89 days. No news vans. No police task force. No volunteers. But Kimberly isn't giving up. She hands out posters, speaks at schools, and runs a Facebook page by herself. "I'm not asking for a miracle," she says. "I'm asking for help." As she speaks, her phone buzzes. It's a message from a private investigator. They may have found something. At the heart of every viral story is a decision. An editor in a newsroom glances at a report, scans a photo, and makes a call. This one. Push it. We rarely think about the invisible hands behind our headlines. But they matter. Lisa Coe, a former assignment editor at a major network, says the unspoken rule was clear. The prettier the photo, the higher the chance of coverage. If she looked like someone who could be your daughter, even better. Beauty, innocence, whiteness. These became ingredients for virality. It's not that we were being told not to cover missing women of color, she clarifies. It just never came up. A silence of omission. The media no longer holds the monopoly on visibility. Social media platforms like TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram are reshaping who gets seen. When Gabby Petito went missing, internet sleuths with millions of followers dissected every clue. A van spotted in a YouTuber's travel vlog. A post with a strange caption. Users compiled Google Maps timelines. But those same platforms often bury posts about missing Black or Indigenous women. The algorithm favors engagement, says tech researcher Dr. Fatima Cruz. Posts that appeal to the broadest audience rise. Those that make people uncomfortable or feel too far from their world sink. The result? Silence. In 2020, a group of young Black women launched #FindOurGirls, a campaign to spotlight missing Black and brown girls in D.C. and across the country. They created digital flyers, hosted Twitter spaces, and called out newsrooms by name. Suddenly, names like Relisha Rudd trended. The movement wasn't just a cry for help. It was an indictment. "We have to be our own media," activist Kennedy Green said. "Because no one else is coming." Back in Chicago, Kimberly Dowdell meets with the private investigator who messaged her. He pulls out a blurry still from a surveillance camera near a Greyhound bus terminal. It shows a young woman, possibly Mariah, walking with a man. Kimberly gasps. That's her bag. That's her hoodie. The man's face is turned away. "We're checking local shelters and hospitals now," he tells her. "If she's alive, she might be here." Kimberly clutches the photo. "I knew she didn't just vanish." The next day, Kimberly uploads the image to TikTok with a plea. "This is my daughter, Mariah. She's been missing for 90 days. Please share. Help me find her." The video starts slow. 10 views. A dozen likes. Then a teacher in Kansas reposts it. A beauty influencer in Atlanta shares it. A true crime podcaster makes a clip. Within 48 hours, it hits 1.2 million views. Comments pour in. "She looks like my niece. I saw someone like her in Detroit." Following. Praying. Sharing. Kimberly stares at her phone, overwhelmed. The media never called. But the people did. In a quiet field outside Tulsa, Oklahoma, a maintenance worker stumbled upon a shallow grave in the fall of 2022. It took weeks to identify the remains. 16-year-old Ayanna Edwards, missing since January. Her family had filed reports, posted flyers, and begged for help, but her case had barely made local news. Her mother, Rhonda, speaks at a vigil. "We screamed into the void, and no one answered." Ayanna's story is not unique. In a 2021 database compiled by the Urban Indian Health Institute, more than 2,300 missing Indigenous women cases remained unresolved, many unpublicized, uninvestigated. And in Detroit, the family of 14-year-old Jamila Robinson still clings to hope. She vanished walking to school in 2018. Her name never trended. No reward was offered. The detective assigned to her case retired months later. No one replaced him. Selective attention doesn't just determine who is found. It determines who is searched for at all. Selective visibility often mirrors broader systemic failures. In the 1980s, the Atlanta child murders took the lives of over 24 Black children. It took years, and relentless community pressure, before media coverage and federal intervention arrived. Activist and author DeRay McKesson points out, Public pressure is a privilege. When that pressure never builds, institutions don't feel urgency. That's how you end up with thousands of cold cases that no one even remembers. Cold cases like that of Tamika Johnson, a 19-year-old from Newark whose 1997 disappearance was dismissed as a runaway situation. In 2020, her remains were accidentally discovered during a construction project. Her death was ruled a homicide. No suspects. No updates. Decades of silence. Kimberly Dowdell's TikTok about her missing daughter changed everything, but it came with a price. I started getting emails from strangers claiming to have seen her, demanding money for tips, she says. One person said they had Mariah, then sent a photo of a random girl and a Venmo request for $500. Online virality opened new doors, but also new wounds. Dr. Renata Fields, a trauma psychologist, explains, the emotional toll of waiting, of false hope, of internet harassment, it's crushing. Families are reliving their worst nightmares in public, often with no real support system. For Kimberly, the highs and lows of internet fame became a double-edged sword. Some days brought leads. Others, only trolls and silence. But she kept posting. Kept hoping. In 2023, the hashtag say their names expanded beyond police brutality to include missing persons of color. A national campaign launched by grassroots group Visibility Now urged media outlets to implement equitable coverage standards. Several local stations adopted new protocols. NPR began highlighting a Missing of the Week segment focused on underrepresented groups. Databases like the Black and Missing Foundation's tracker saw surges in traffic. The movement wasn't perfect, but it was growing. It's not about taking away from one group, said organizer Darnell James. It's about making room for all of us. Kimberly receives a call from a woman in Indianapolis. I think I saw her, she says. The girl from TikTok. She was at a bus station, looked confused. I tried to speak to her, but she got scared and left. Within hours, Kimberly's private investigator is on the ground, reviewing footage. The security camera catches a glimpse. A girl with Mariah's hoodie stepping onto a bus headed for Cincinnati. Hope, fragile but real, flickers again. Kimberly boards a bus herself the next day. She won't stop until she finds her. At the heart of the disparity lies a harsh truth. America's institutions were never built to value all lives equally. In 2022, data journalist Nora Sinclair conducted a sweeping analysis of more than 7,000 missing persons cases reported between 2016 and 2020. Her findings were staggering. White women under 35 accounted for less than a third of total missing persons reports, but received over 70% of all national media coverage. It wasn't just random, Sinclair explains. It was patterned, predictable. The younger, whiter, and more affluent the subject, the more likely they were to appear in primetime headlines. And the further from that ideal, the quieter the search. The disparities were particularly glaring in indigenous communities. In Montana, where indigenous people make up 7% of the population, they represented nearly 26% of missing persons in 2021. Yet most cases received no national attention. Many weren't even logged correctly by local authorities. Why? Because federal systems like NAMUS, National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, and NCIC, National Crime Information Center, rely on voluntary data submissions by law enforcement, and many jurisdictions simply don't comply. Others lack the training or resources. Some just don't care. Frustrated by years of inaction, several families of missing persons began forming their own search coalitions. One of them, Derica and Natalie Wilson, founders of the Black and Missing Foundation. Since 2008, they've helped resolve over 400 missing persons cases that received little to no media attention. We had to build what didn't exist, says Natalie. We became the investigators, the PR reps, the social media managers. We learned to fight smarter. In one 2023 case, the Wilsons helped locate 13-year-old Ebony Price, missing from Birmingham. Police initially labeled her a runaway, until social pressure forced a reclassification. Within weeks, Ebony was recovered. She'd been trafficked across state lines. There are real consequences to these labels, Derica says. Runaway. gang-affiliated, troubled. These terms decide who gets searched for, and who doesn't. In Silicon Valley, computer engineer Farah El-Masri had watched the headlines for years. Gabby Petito, Molly Tibbetts, Lacey Peterson, all tragic cases that dominated news cycles. But where were the black, brown, and indigenous women? Farah created Project Echo, an AI-powered tool that scraped news websites and compared coverage metrics for missing persons by race, age, and socioeconomic status. What she found confirmed Sinclair's earlier work and amplified it. Her research, published in late 2023, revealed the invisible hand of algorithmic bias. Social media platforms, she discovered, were more likely to boost posts featuring lighter skin tones, symmetrical features, and emotionally engaging visuals, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of attention disparity. Virality is not neutral, Farah explained at a TED Talk in 2024. It's coded into the platforms themselves. So we must recode the system, or build better ones. Back in Ohio, Kimberly Dowdell was chasing shadows. She arrived in Cincinnati alone, armed with a flyer, a face, and fading hope. The security footage from the Greyhound station was grainy, but the girl in the background was definitely wearing Mariah's hoodie. Local police offered little support. "Could be anyone," one officer said. "Are you sure she didn't just run away again?" Kimberly didn't answer. She'd heard that line before. Instead, she found help in an unexpected place. A volunteer named Savannah Ray, who ran a missing persons mutual aid group called Eyes on the Street. They canvassed shelters, visited food banks, followed leads. 3 days later, they hit something. A bus driver recognized Mariah. Said she rode his route several times. Quiet girl. Looked scared. Last drop-off was near Vine and Liberty, near a notorious encampment nicknamed The Bottom. Kimberly's heart dropped. That area was dangerous. But she was already on her way. In Washington, D.C., a congressional hearing on racial disparities in missing persons cases was underway. It was the first of its kind. Among the speakers, journalist Gwen Ifill's niece, the Wilsons from BAMFI, Farah El-Masri, and Rhonda Edwards, mother of the late Ayanna Edwards. Their testimonies shook the room. "What happened to my daughter is not rare," Rhonda said. "It's just rarely reported. That's the difference. That's the violence." Several lawmakers pledged to introduce new legislation. Mandatory national reporting for missing persons cases, federal task forces for underrepresented communities, and grants for indigenous and black-led search organizations. Whether it would pass, no one knew. But for the first time, something was moving. It was nearly dusk when Kimberly found her daughter. Mariah was huddled behind an abandoned building, wearing the same hoodie. She looked thinner, hollow-eyed, but alive. At first, she didn't recognize her mother. Then she whispered, "You found me." They embraced on the cracked pavement, tears washing away weeks of fear. But it wasn't over. Mariah spoke in broken fragments, about a man who promised her shelter, about the locked room, about others like her. She wasn't alone. "There's more girls," she said. "Some can't leave." Kimberly turned to Savannah. "We can't stop here. Who are the others Mariah spoke of? Can they be found in time? And what happens when citizen investigators uncover something the system has ignored for years?" Kimberly Dowdell didn't sleep that night. Mariah's voice kept echoing. "There's more girls. Some can't leave." The next morning, Kimberly returned to the encampment, this time with Savannah Ray, 2 local volunteers, and a concealed body cam. They walked the perimeter of The Bottom, where addiction, exploitation, and survival blurred into something feral. They weren't police. They weren't press. But they had names, faces, and urgency. It wasn't long before a lead emerged. A young woman named Tasha, barely 18, stepped from the shadows. She recognized Mariah. "We were kept together," she said. "In that house off Glenway Avenue. There were 5 of us. Maybe 6. Some got taken out and never came back." Tasha scribbled an address on a scrap of cardboard. "We called him Mr. D." The address led to a crumbling duplex with blackout curtains and boarded windows. Savannah and Kimberly circled the block. No visible movement. Savannah made a call to a former cop-turned-private investigator she trusted. His name was Marcus DeLeon, a soft-spoken Gulf War vet with a knack for finding people others gave up on. That night, they surveilled the house from a parked car. Around midnight, a man exited through the back alley. Late 40s. Stocky. Carrying what looked like fast food bags. He left in a gray pickup with no plates. Inside the house, lights stayed off, but movement flickered behind the curtains. They weren't ready to call police. Not yet. If this is what we think it is, Marcus said, we can't risk the girls being moved. They needed evidence. 2 nights later, Marcus installed a hidden camera in a dumpster facing the alley. What they captured chilled them. Girls, 3 of them, led out in the dark. Eyes down. No shoes. One was limping. A 4th figure appeared, dragging trash bags. Inside one, what looked like clothing and a torn child's backpack. They had enough. Marcus contacted a friend in the state attorney's office. The footage reached the Cincinnati PD's Human Trafficking Task Force. A raid was scheduled within 48 hours. Kimberly prayed it wouldn't be too late. On the morning of June 12, 2024, the house on Glenway Avenue was breached. Inside they found 4 girls between the ages of 14 and 17, one of them just 12. Malnourished, disoriented, and terrified. The house had been fortified from the inside, its windows screwed shut. Rooms had chains. No phones. No exits. And no Mr. D. He was gone. But his name wasn't a mystery anymore. Donald Ray Winslow. Age 49. Former delivery driver. History of assault. 2 prior arrests for solicitation. Released in 2022 after plea deals. Now he was the subject of a federal manhunt. Mariah's tip had saved lives. But justice was still on the run. For the first time, Kimberly's story made national news. CNN, NBC, even Dateline. Not just for her daughter's recovery, but for the hidden trafficking network exposed because one mother wouldn't stop looking. Senator Cori Bush tweeted, "Kimberly Dowdell did what law enforcement failed to do. This is what community-led justice looks like." But Kimberly wasn't celebrating. "I got my baby back," she told CNN. But so many others never did. They deserved cameras too. Online, the hashtag Girls Left Behind hashtag trended for 2 weeks. Donations flooded the Eyes on the Street Foundation. Visibility Now announced plans to launch a new alert system, the Equity Amber. The system would prioritize underrepresented cases, mobilize community responders, and bypass slow law enforcement bureaucracy. Change was coming. Slowly. But change wasn't enough. Not for everyone. 3 weeks later, Kimberly received a call. It was a reporter from ProPublica. He had been investigating Donald Winslow's arrest record and parole history. And what he discovered made Kimberly sick. Donald Winslow had been flagged in 2023 for inappropriate contact with a juvenile girl. The complaint was closed after police found insufficient evidence. That girl, Aaliyah Thompson, Mariah's best friend. She had gone missing in 2023 and was never found. The original officer handling the complaint, Detective Raymond Keller, had resigned amid an unrelated corruption probe. He never followed up. Aaliyah might have been the first. Kimberly dropped the phone. The room spun. She wasn't finished. She was just getting started. How many girls were overlooked before someone cared to look? Can a system that let them vanish ever deliver justice? And will the man responsible ever be found? Top of form of the 4 survivors rescued from the Glenway house. 3 had been reported missing. But none of their names were widely known. 14-year-old Brianna Torres had disappeared from Indianapolis in November 2023. Her mother had begged police to issue an Amber Alert. They declined, calling it a probable runaway. 15-year-old Jayla Green had vanished from a foster home in Kentucky. Her file was never flagged as urgent. A clerical error meant her name wasn't even listed in NAMUS. 12-year-old Janelle Simmons was abducted after school in Columbus. Her grandmother's Facebook posts went ignored. There was never a press conference. Only the fourth girl, Emily, had no official record at all. She didn't know her last name. She had no ID. She remembered only that her uncle had picked her up after church one Sunday, and she'd never gone home again. The system hadn't just failed these girls. It had erased them. As Kimberly Dowdell and Savannah Ray dug deeper into Donald Winslow's background, more disturbing patterns emerged. There were at least 6 prior complaints, all closed without charges. 2017. Suspicious behavior near a middle school. No follow-up. 2019. Reported for luring girls with food outside a shelter. Dismissed. 2022. Linked to a missing 15-year-old, never found. No warrant issued. Each time, Winslow evaded scrutiny. Not because he was invisible, but because his victims were. One retired detective came forward anonymously, telling ProPublica, "We knew his name. We knew his habits." But these weren't high-profile cases. No pressure. No resources. He slipped through. Kimberly's voice shook when she read the documents. They let him hunt. 4 years. The #GirlsLeftBehind campaign exploded after a viral interview with Mariah aired on NBC News. Carefully edited to protect her identity, it featured Mariah reading a letter she wrote to the girls still out there. "I know how scared you are. I know how quiet the dark gets. But someone is looking for you. Don't give up." The clip was viewed 4.3 million times in 48 hours. Kimberly and Savannah were invited to testify before Congress. They presented a proposal drafted by BAMFI, Visibility Now, and the Black Policy Institute, the Missing Equity Act. The legislation would create a National Missing Persons Equity Task Force, require states to submit all missing persons data to NAMUS, fund alerts and community search teams in underserved areas, mandate annual reporting on racial and gender disparities in missing persons coverage. It was met with bipartisan applause. But one name still hadn't resurfaced: Donald Winslow. 2 months after the Glenway raid, a U.S. Marshal spotted a familiar truck in southern Illinois. Surveillance drones confirmed the driver matched Winslow's description. The property, an old farmhouse, was raided at dawn. Inside, weapons, restraints, a hidden basement, and a girl, 13-year-old Aaliyah Thompson, alive. She had been missing for over 14 months. Kimberly flew to Chicago the same day. She held Aaliyah's mother, Latasha, on the tarmac. "We're bringing her home," she whispered. Winslow was arrested without incident. He offered no resistance, no explanation. At arraignment, he pled not guilty to 12 federal counts of human trafficking and kidnapping. He was denied bail. The media frenzy began. But for Kimberly, none of it mattered. "Let the cameras flash," she said. "We know who was watching when no one else did." Missing Equity Act passed with overwhelming support. It wasn't perfect, but it marked a shift, a recognition that bias isn't just interpersonal. It's systemic. Newsrooms began adopting internal audits to examine their coverage disparities. More outlets partnered with Black and Missing Foundation and Indigenous watch groups to amplify stories outside the algorithm. The Equity Amber System launched pilot programs in 8 states. Within the first 3 months, 23 missing girls of color were located through alerts the traditional system would have ignored. As for Kimberly, she turned her home into a halfway shelter for recovered teens. She named it the Mariah House. Mariah enrolled in art therapy. She paints every day now. Her newest canvas shows a sunrise and 5 girls walking into the light. Why do some stories catch fire while others burn quietly in the dark? Why did we know everything about Gabby Petito, but nothing about Mariah Dowdell? Or Brianna? Or Aaliyah? Why do algorithms favor symmetry over suffering? We don't get to choose which lives matter most. But we can choose to change the system that does. Kimberly Dowdell, in her final public speech of 20,265, said it best. "You may never remember my name. But if the next time a little black girl disappears and the world actually looks for her, that's enough." Then she stepped back from the microphone and walked into the crowd, into the arms of her daughter. As 2026 dawned, A new database launched. The Visible Project. Open source. Community fed. Algorithm proof. Its motto: no one left invisible. Every case matters. Every face counts. And finally, for the first time in a long time, someone is watching. What did you think of the case? Please share your thoughts in the comment below. If you want more video like this, please be sure to like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more true crime videos. See you in the next one.